What does it mean to live abroad almost all throughout your 20s? To choose to being somewhere else and pick a path that's always kind of on the road. When you're feeling sick and you're on your own, there's no worse type of loneliness that you can experience that makes you wonder, why the hell have you chosen that lifestyle for yourself? That's a good question. Hi guys, it's Super V, and to no one's surprise, I'm again in an airport traveling. But this time it feels a bit more special because I am going home and I wanted to share a bit about my origins, how they influence who I am today. I was talking with a friend yesterday who was just moving out of her flat to yet another one. And that made me reflect a bit about what it means to live abroad. What does it mean to live abroad almost all throughout your 20s? To choose to being somewhere else and pick a path that's always kind of on the road. We were both tired. Especially about the idea of moving flats again. And we both agreed that there is nothing worse when living abroad than moving flats again and again and again and feeling sick. When you're feeling sick and you're on your own, there's no worse type of loneliness that you can experience that makes you wonder, why the hell have you chosen that lifestyle for yourself? That's a good question. Why have I left Romania in the first place? In my case, it was for knowledge, power, and the promise of something better. I'm pretty sure people who are coming from a good place finding a bit harder to live it, right? So, coming from a small village, the myth of the small village on a map of nowhere, I felt quite powerless about improving the situations which revealed so much injustice around me. And I was also quite frustrated at my own inability to change my own life. So, for me, going abroad, but going out of that small village in the first place, was a pursuit to understand how the world works, to find some sort of tools that would enable me to create positive impact, that would enable me to change my life in the first place, but also change other people's life. I thought that I could only find that out there in the world. It was almost like in the story with the small frog in the well who cannot see around. So you live with the myth of a better place, and I guess that just attracts you. You really want to go and see what's out there. I went abroad for the first time when I was 15. I was lucky. One of our professors had this project financed by the European Union, and I was a good student. I got noticed and I got invited in this opportunity. For the first time, I traveled abroad on a bus for 24 hours that took us from Romania in Eastern Europe to Belgium in Western Europe in about 2 days. We got to visit the European Parliament, and we even got to do one of the fancy simulation where you are working as a representative in the parliament and you are advocating for one regulatory changes, you're negotiating and debating among different parties, and you really are working to make some change on a fundamental matter for society. That idea that one could use knowledge to create real change, debate issues, and literally change the structure of society, the structure of societies across the continent, felt amazing. And the entire city center in Brussels also intoxicates you with the feeling of power because there's so many institutions there. So as a kid coming from this small village and looking for this sort of ability to change, that first experience abroad kind of shaped my life forever. Everything felt exciting and novel in the city. Using English for the first time, my rudimentary English, to communicate with the shop owners, to negotiate for the small souvenirs, observing the diversity of the world in one grand place, understanding all of a sudden how big the world is, how diverse the problems and solutions of this world were, really opened my mind. And that's also when I realized that the first step to entangling myself in those realities or even having a life abroad was actually learning how to decode those realities, to decode the people and the cultures. So When I returned from the trip to Romania, I was pretty hyped up about learning languages, and stepped up my efforts to learn English and French, and I was already thinking about what was going to be the next step. How am I going to expand even more my potential to have an international life and career? Fast forward, since then, I lived abroad in 5 different cities across the world. I lived in Europe and Asia, in China, Hong Kong, and France. And I traveled to so many countries that it becomes annoying whenever I need to fill a visa application that requires the history of your travel in your recent years. I lived most of my 20s abroad. What does it mean to live abroad in your 20s? A lot. I think it's a topic that you cannot really discuss in just 20 minutes or 2 hours. You might make an entire series discussing all the different aspects of it. But I guess number one, it means leaving behind your comfort zone. Most of the times, when you graduate in your early 20s and you decide to stay in one place, you're going to gradually settle in a rhythm of a life. You're going to be with the same people. You're going to have the same social network. And it kind of becomes safe, expected, and comfortable. When you decide to live abroad, you decide to leave that behind. Because living abroad involves many more unexpected variables and change, sometimes constant change. You discover a lot about who you are outside of your comfort zone, and you learn to deal with context that you're not used to, that you don't fully understand. And my theory is that the level of discomfort you're experiencing abroad is directly correlated with your ability to understand the language of that place, with the mastery that you have over that language. And I only realized this when I moved to Hong Kong, which was the biggest cultural and identity shock I've ever experienced, because it was for the first time in my life when I felt like a complete outsider, not knowing Cantonese, not being really capable of using the rudimentary Mandarin that I spoke back then. I really felt like separated by the others through a glass film, and I understood for the first time maybe what it means to be a real immigrant that hadn't had the chance to get proper education and to acquire new languages before going for a work opportunity in a country that offers that, but where they don't necessarily speak the language of the place. So you might wonder, what's the point of it all? Why would you do that to yourself? Well, remember, people who usually do this are either explorers, are thrill seekers, or they're really coming from places where life, in a way or another, was not going in the best way it could go for them. And remember, I wanted to go out there for knowledge and power and self-awareness and the promise better. So first, living abroad made me crazily courageous, because that's what happens when you're outside of your comfort zone constantly. Second, going through all of this, you get an incredible level of self-awareness and self-confidence. Learn not only about who you are in different circumstances, in all sorts of situations, but also, most importantly, you learn about who you are not. Because for the first time when you're faced with different cultures, when you are the other, you finally start to understand how you are different. And some of these differences are actually things that matter to you, that you really value. I never realized which parts of my Romanian identity I really treasured before I went abroad and tried to mold myself into cultures that are very different or similar, but where I could never fully mold myself because I was Romanian. Second, what's happening when you're living abroad is you're becoming your own anchor. No one else will do things for you, especially when you move abroad alone, like I did. It's a great opportunity when you're young to learn how to do things and how to survive in this world. The more you learn about yourself, the more you learn how to love yourself in those harder situations, the easier and clearer it becomes to love others, because you know how to love yourself and to love life in general. Some of the challenges that you have to face when moving abroad is finding accommodation in different systems. You have to learn how to keep a flat clean, how to cook on your own, how to manage your finances, and go to the hospital in another language, navigating different systems, like I said, and maybe multiple times, depend on how often you're moving places. At a point, all of this really becomes just another routine. It's not even a challenge. At the beginning, it can be super exciting when you're moving to a place, but then after doing several times, you realize, while talking to your friends, that when they're considering moving to a new place, it's not gonna be just about, discovering a new culture or discovering a new city, because a lot of these steps just become normalcy. The other thing that you're discovering living abroad is a sense of cultural humility. And you unlearn a lot of what you thought you knew. But I think most importantly is that most of the times people think that when you're living abroad, it's a lot about cultural difference and differences among people. But what I personally came to realize is that we are all so similar. Once you move beyond this surface level of differences, of cultural differences, when I say surface, it's actually a big chunk of who people are. But once you go beyond that, once you go to the depth of what it means to be human, you realize how similar we all are across the planet. And this gives you an incredible confidence when it comes to interacting with humans, with people in any circumstance, anywhere in the world, because you finally develop a fine understanding of what it truly means to be human, no matter where you go. And then fourth aspect that I just want to describe in this brief video is making friends across the world, and with them stories for a lifetime. I think this is one of the things that I love the most about living abroad, because living abroad in your 20s brings into your life really special people. Mostly because the type of people who are living abroad will share the same challenges and aspirations like you. So the type of friendships you're forging with these people are probably bonded over little traumatic experiences or crazy challenges of your daily life in that new culture, or some beautiful small moments of connection, of human connections among different cultures. I really believe that the energy of these friendships hits differently, because people who survive or thrive in different cultures and in these unfamiliar places are usually driven by a special type of grit and kindness that's so inspiring. And in my case, making friends across the world is definitely aligned with my original desire to get to know the world in its depth and to understand different cultures and different places in this world, but also to create that network that would one day enable me to enact positive change. And due to my lifestyle so far, I got to know so many interesting and brilliant people, and I'm pretty sure that many of the friends that I have today will become soon in the future high-level decision makers who will have a say over the direction of our world. And I really hope it's gonna be in the right direction. Then you either make these friends in crazy situations that turn into memorable stories, or these friends will bring you into memorable situations that turn into stories for a lifetime. It's true, the nature of friendship is different. The friendships are more transitory since we're all moving around. Goodbyes become the norm, but the intensity and depth of this friendship, I think, really compensate in the long term. What else does it mean to live abroad? So I talked about feeling lonely sometimes. And I want to really connect this idea and this feeling with the process of self-awareness and self-confidence that you obtain living abroad. When you're moving alone somewhere in a new place and you don't know anyone, you are going to spend a lot of time, at least in the beginning, on your own, which is not something that people do naturally, especially if you're surrounded by opportunity to socialize. But then when you're forced to do it, it's probably your best opportunity at spending time with the person you're usually spending time the least, which is yourself, because you are just forced to hear your own thoughts, spend time on your own, face everything on your own, and actually get to know yourself under different stressors and different stimuli. So in this sense, because there's no other option for you than look inwardly, you develop that self-awareness that slowly turns into confidence because you know how you react. And you learn a lot about your needs and you learn about who you are, and that slowly manifests into your behavior. So in a sense, living abroad, it's the most beautiful combination, a sense of freedom and an acceptance of loneliness as part of the natural state of the world and of a human, and embracing it. And then also something that truly teaches you how to appreciate much more those moments of connection, of genuine connection, the moments of togetherness you have with your friends and with your family, with your loved ones. So we're gonna go from Beijing to Istanbul, and in Istanbul I have an hour of layover, and after that we are going to Romania. Welcome to my country. Thank you. Have a good day. So what else does it mean to be living abroad? It's a lot about coming home. It also means planning for it a lot in terms of days off and money and travel itineraries and all of that. But it's all worth it, I guess, and needed. One of the best advice I've ever received was from my manager, who had the international life I always wanted. And I asked how did he manage to keep a sense of identity through it all. He said something really, really wise, which is whenever you feel low on energy and whenever you feel like you lost your sense of identity, think about what your roots are and revisit those places or something like this. So now, whenever I come back home and revisit my country, I remember this. I revisit those original dreams and identities that I had as a kid, as a youth living here. It's interesting to observe how this country has changed and also how I change within myself. It's also interesting to reflect what home means. One thing I learned living abroad in my 20s is that home is something that you can find anywhere. Home can be a place inside our heart. A friend even told me that home for her means the place that she decorates with her most special furniture and decorations and plants. And this is truly revolutionizing, because when I go and meet my friends in their stable lifestyles, I might start wondering if this is what I need, if this would solve all my leftover existential crises and problems. And at some point, there might be even some sort of pressure that you have to have everything figured out, that your life is better, because otherwise, why would you even live abroad? Why would you still be out there? But the truth is, no matter where you go on this planet, people face the same existential crisis, the same worries and problems. So it all starts within us, our perspective on happiness, on purpose, on what truly matters to us, and on what home means to us, and what home we're trying to build. Someone once said, we need to go only to return. I guess that's the premise in The Alchemist too. But the fact that we return to our original departure point doesn't make the entire journey meaningless. It makes it ever more important. The journey teaches you the importance of that departure point too. Through the journey, you become someone whom you could never become if you never left that departure point. Living abroad in your 20s doesn't just teach you about the world. It teaches you a whole lot about who you are when no one's watching, and that changes everything. The journey itself was what you needed to achieve some higher truth and to achieve a freedom to choose what works best for you. among all the options out there. Enjoy the Super Beehive to learn how to live fearlessly and how to pursue your dreams wherever you're coming from. See ya.